So
Okay. First of all, I'll start it out. Today's date is the 24th of February, 2020. It's a Monday. It's about 7:26 p.m. Eastern time, or 6:26 if you're on Central time. Bill, I'm going to just kind of give the gist of what we're going to be talking about today. Bill and I were on the phone today, and we agreed about something about the elites. That basically our elites are staring us right in the face, and it has to do with the election that's coming up recently. Joseph Biden, 78 years old, or going to be 78 this year. Bernie Sanders going to be 78, and Mike Bloomberg is either 78 or going to be. All born in 1942. Nancy Pelosi, born 1940. Mitch McConnell, the minority whip leader and from Kentucky, born in 1942. What does that all have in common, Bill?
oh, the age, the baby boomers. This goes way back.
Yeah, this
When you
actually predates baby boomers. What have we noticed about politicians over the years as we've looked at them over 20 years? Does it seem like, or 30 years, the same crowd?
It's the exact same crowd. The only faces that changed was the presidents.
Right, and he's also from 1947. So what I've gathered is that a lot of the so-called elites that we talk about are staring us right in the face. Those are our elites, and
I
they are
would,
working.
yep, exactly.
I mean, the corporate powers that work behind the scenes, they're all in the same age group. They all find. Bill, I was going to tell you something, and this really is disturbing to me. Is that Generation X, which was born from 65 all the way through 1982, have almost no representation politically whatsoever. They are a generation of people that have been totally skipped, where, like, I remember back in 1977, I was a young kid, we elected a 30-year-old or 29-year-old mayor named Dennis Kucinich, okay, in Cleveland. It was not uncommon for a 29 or 30-year-old guy to win a seat in the House, or on a mayoral level of a major city. Now, it would be unheard of to see a millennial get into that same, or a Gen Xer. I believe that what has happened is that the people that raised us, be it the silent generation and going through the baby boomers, all feel that we're like children, and they literally treat us like children. And they are the ones, not only have they screwed up the problem, they've created the problems, but now we got to vote for them to fix the problems. Throw your 2 cents in here.
Well, I think that's it. I think what's actually really happened is these same people have been behind this for a long time. And I think if we went with every name that Steve just gave you, and we went into Great Britain and we looked at the
Right.
King and the Queen, and we go over and look at the Pope, and we look at the Rothschild, we look at the Rockefeller, I think you're going to find all the people in these positions are the same age bracket that we're talking about. So I
Right.
think reality, I think it's right in our face. I think they created the David Icke, the Mark
Right.
Passio, the Alex Jones, the Alan Watts. Okay,
Yeah.
they created the Trilateral Commission, which is real. Okay, they
Yeah.
created the Bilderberg, and they created all this stuff, and they created the pyramid, and they gave us a lot of truth. They deceived us at the same time into looking for the boogeyman, because
Right.
nobody knows who the elite is, and we can blame it on the Khazarian Jews, whatever, right? When the
Right. Exactly.
entire time they've been right in our freaking face.
Well, and this is the thing, and I don't want to take away from the fact that corporate powers don't influence politicians, but they're all working in tandem. They're all working together. And the biggest thing that I've noticed is when Bill Clinton ran for office in 92, as you remember as well as I do, did you notice how, like, people of my generation, like the MTV crowd, which were like the Gen Xers, how they all were enamored by some guy that was a hippie from the 60s, that, he had a beard. Clinton had a beard when he was in his 20s, and everybody seemed to always revere the 60s. And it was amazing because these people had a very carefree attitude of the world. They were able to participate in the sexual revolution. Not everybody did, of course, but they were able to get access to cheap education. They were able to graduate into conservative yuppies and vote for Reagan in the 80s. And then they promoted these draconian drug laws, which sent a lot of young people like my own age into prison for a long time because of the mandatory minimum drug sentencing. These are the very same people who have screwed things up, and they want us to continue to vote for them. I mean, it is insane,
Yeah.
and it is really insane. And what I've noticed is that, and I think that millennials are already feeling this, but Gen Xers are the first to feel this. There is no political representation for my age group from 1970 to 1982 or 65 to 82. Everybody that is in a position of high power, whether it be a Supreme Court justice, whether it be a senator from a different state, almost every one of them was born in the 40s and 50s, and they're still going strong. Their health is so good that these people will probably be in power for another 20 to 30 years.
Well,
And it's sickening.
we're seeing this going on, and if you think about this, it would be like psyop after psyop after psyop to send everybody looking for this elite group of people when they run your face the whole time. So you're never
Right.
going to catch on that it's them, okay, that's actually doing it. When you think about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah,
it's-
and this election is what do we have? Bernie Sanders is going to be the so-called liberal that's going to save us from this mess. Bill, I believe that we could solve the energy problems. The people who created the environmental catastrophes like the oil spills, the people that gave breaks to the rich, the people that decided that we were going to tear out your sewer or septics in favor of a sewer, and I'm using that small example. People that have done the fracking, all of them represent this baby boomer generation. The people that are like the Occupy Wall Street group, which had good intentions, represented my generation and the millennials. Nobody fucking listened, pardon my language. And they never will listen, because the very people that create the freaking problems are the very people that want us to vote for them. And there's nobody acknowledging this problem that, generationally speaking, if you talk to younger people, I think most young people my age, I mean, I can't believe I'm going to be 50 this year, and I feel like in a state of arrested development, because the powers that be have made my generation feel like we're not worthy to be leaders.
No. Well, think about
guys my age. Yeah.
Yeah, think about it. They created MRSA or Mensa, right, and they created the Freemasons, the United Nations.
Right.
So
Mensa,
they create the Mensa, and we create, let's say, the Freemasons, and they built the hierarchy to themselves that we're all looking at over this 50 years. And they just take these people from Freemasonry to Mensa, and they groom the ones they want, recruit them into taking these guys' place. When they get too old and they're dead, they've already got the replacement sitting there.
Right. Right, and you notice there are a few hand-picked people already. Ben Shapiro was a millennial, and he's like in his early 30s, and he's fit, and I said this a couple years ago, he's the next guy to replace Rush Limbaugh. So they are hand-selecting a few millennials or Gen Xers, but the old guard is still majorly in power. And like I said, you look at a guy like Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi carries a briefcase. She walks like a 40-year-old businesswoman on Wall Street. This is a woman that could easily live another 20 years. And I'm dead serious when I see this. I mean, I don't see any end to this power in sight. And so I had theorized the only way we could solve this problem, Bill, it wouldn't be physical violence, as in it would be a way that we could assert what the problem is. There's a generational problem, the people that screwed the problem. We have to physically remove these people from power, let them retire, let them live out their lives, but we have to get them out of the White House in the Senate. We have got to get these old friggin' morons out of there before it's too late, because they are not going to propel us into a position. We have to have a new breed of people in our generation, particularly mine, because I'm at the older end of it, 50 years old, that are going to take over the reins and do the right thing. Because Nancy Pelosi isn't going to solve the problems with the environment. She's not going to solve the problems with the healthcare issue. We've been talking about healthcare for 30, 40 years, and the very people that are responsible for keeping the problem going are the ones that claim they have an answer to it. That is
Yeah,
madness off the charts. It's
it
insane.
is. There should
Yeah.
also be, what we need to do is get all the old out completely. Okay,
Yeah.
then you need to put new in, but not new that the old pick. You're
All
going
right.
to have to take
Yes,
the
right.
away from them, because we can't allow the old people to pick the people that's replacing them, because they're going to replace people with psychopathic people they've already groomed. So
Right. And
but
there's far few. Yeah. You notice how there's a slow migration to do this, because there's not a lot of people in Congress that are born in the mid 70s, because it's maybe not as easy to find enough of these people. I mean, this older generation, like I said, the baby boomers and the silent generation, these people can very well, through life extension technology or good health, they could easily rule this country for another 20, 30 years. And look at it this way. The last baby boomer was born in 1964, so that's 56 years ago. 56, 66, 76, 86. You could talk, somebody born in the early 60s could easily be in power for another 30 years. And
yeah,
somebody
usually.
born in the 50s would, yeah. So somebody even in the 50s, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, that's something else, Steve, that should be flying in their face. All
Right.
these people seem to be living long lives and nice and healthy, while everybody that's not in these positions are getting cancer and getting sick and dying at younger ages. The majority are, unless you're these people that's in these positions. Then you see live on and on. Look at Kissinger. He's not even there, but he's still alive, and bet your ass he's still calling shots.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They're all calling shots. They all have the Council on Foreign Relations, just to let you know, that's an American organization that appoints Americans to the positions, and it's got like, I think, 2,000 members. But here's the thing. The generational gap is all centered around these people born between 1920 and 1950 or 55. I mean, it seems that there is a cabal of people, because the baby boomers make up such a huge percentage of the population, they can get the vote from the other baby boomers who are now retiring. We almost have to have a coup to take this power back. It has to be somewhat by force. It doesn't have to be violent. I would say we restrain them, bring them to their homes and wherever they live, and say, you guys are done ruling. Because, Bill, I can't see these people ever conceding power. I cannot see Mitch.
I would agree with that. I think
I can't see Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump and all these people, even though they're multimillionaires, just deciding to retire in.
Uh-oh, Steve, you froze up. Okay, I'm recording here, but as you can tell, Steve locked up. Okay, I think his device went dead. Not a good thing. Okay, now we're recording again.
Okay, I'm sorry, we got interrupted. I don't know whether it was on my end or your end. I'm going to make sure my internet connection is solid here. I think it is. Anyways, so we were talking about the problem with the power structure. If we were going to take the power back, and I think this is where I got cut off here, is that we would have to remove these people who are lifetime politicians out of power. Term limits has to come to an end. Or I mean,
Yes.
we got to have term limits. We can't allow unlimited terms, because what's happened is we're going to continue to have the same senators reelected year after year after year. And this is the reason why Dianne Feinstein is still in power today. This is the reason why Nancy Pelosi and people of the past, senators from different states, like Strom Thurmond was the one that died at 100 years old he was in power, I think 60 years or something. We have to have a new guard. Now, I wanted to get back to what I said earlier about my generation. It's really bad, because my generation, Generation X, never saw any real political. We never had any say-so in climate issues. We never had any say-so in, the environment, the healthcare, anything of that nature. Every decision that's been made everything that's been screwed up and every decision that's been made has been by this old guard. And this is what I maintain strongly. As long as these people like Joe Biden can walk down Capitol Hill like a 40-year-old business guy, as long as Nancy Pelosi can strut through there, as long as we can continually have these old, farty, old Jewish and white men running things, and women, I don't think we need a new change of the guard in this country. And we don't have it because we were made as a generation to believe that we were basically mentally inferior to these people. Bill, I've never felt so, and I said this earlier before it broke up, I feel like a lot of younger people, even in my generation, are in a state of what's called arrested development. We never really got to have any real decision-making abilities in the political system.
No. They made it for years where so many people for years, the two things you didn't talk about or didn't associate with was politics and religion.
Right.
Okay, and that was during
Yeah.
my generation growing up in yours. That went on for a long
Right.
time. Okay, so really,
Right.
I think what's really happened is just exactly this. Your so-called
Mhm.
elite have been in your face
Right.
the entire time. Okay, and they created
Right.
all this stuff because they worked together from the over there in Britain to the bankers to all of them unified around the world worked together, and
Right.
they created this big spoof about NWO, even though they
Mhm.
were serious about doing this stuff, but they created this spoof about we got these elite people that nobody knew who they are. Okay, this way
Yeah. They're
they're
like,
right
you
in your
can't touch them.
face.
You don't know
Yeah,
who they are. Right.
and the entire time they've been right in our face.
Right. And they are in like the business decision. And like, okay, let's talk about the Wall Street problem. We got a guy named Mike Bloomberg running for the candidacy to be the Democratic nominee. Bloomberg is a product of Wall Street, has always been a product of Wall Street. He graduated college in the early 1960s, if that's not enough. So he is part of the bailout, yet he's going to give, he was the mayor of New York for 12, 13 years. He was the one who promoted the stop and frisk program, mostly affected minorities, but all sorts of people. And so in the process, and then he wants to be the president. He's going to represent civil rights, and then he's going to represent Wall Street and the healthcare issue, the healthcare scene. And we cannot continue another 25, 30 years with the same group of people running things. And I had maintained strongly, we have to have, and I don't know how we would go about doing this, but there has to be a removal of these people from office so they never see the White House again. We can't have Supreme Court.
I think on a worldwide basis, unfortunately.
Yes, it has to happen on a worldwide basis, but it could start here. The same thing with Putin. Vladimir Putin is going to be 68 this year. He may have already turned 68. And do you see Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, ever leaving power in 5 years? This guy is going to take it to his grave with him. We all know he will. The same thing with the leader of Israel, Netanyahu. He's 71, 72. The old guard has to go. They are the ones that promote the war. They're the ones who promote the wars for oil and killing and sending young people to war. This crowd is destructive as hell, and it's around the world. It's not just in America. Yeah.
It is, from the Pope right down to the King and the Queen. Pay attention to their age. Now, worldwide, it seems to be falling into the same age bracket. So I think you're looking at your group of elite people, and they've always been right in your face. And I think all of this stuff that we've been watching through the years and studying here, we see a lot of truth because we understand the psychopathic stuff that's going on. But this is the reason nobody can find the elite, because they've been in your face. I think they put the pyramid and all that was just a big ploy to send people looking in the wrong places. And I mean, it actually makes sense.
Well, I'm not looking the wrong, and I try to be I try to be practical, Bill. Even if there wasn't an elite, you can't take away from the fact that the younger generations want real change. They want to see a future where they know they got health care. They know they have clean drinking water. And all we keep doing is following the ruling of these older people in power. Let's continue to cut more forest down. Let's frack more. Let's do this instead of 30 years ago when we could have been working on alternative energies like hydrogen, and we could have been working on things like everyone having solar panels. And I even thought of this one, and this is one you don't think of, is you know how expensive it is to get windows installed? Like a government policy that would mandate triple paned windows where you are guaranteed that you're not wasting energy. You would have, because slum landlords will give you a house and they'll have like crappy windows, and most of those poor people don't know how to insulate themselves from the cold, so they just run their heat bill through the roof. We need responsible planning, and we're not getting it from these old farts in office. We're not at all.
Well, no, you're not. And if you're going to move forward and advance as a population anywhere in the world, leaders should be changing too, and underneath people's noses for years and years now. You keep changing just the leader, and all the people that are in positions are still running the leader, and they're all the people that Steve just got through talking about.
Right.
And they keep never leaving positions.
Right. And it's like you might get a guy like Jared Kushner who's like 39 or 38, and he's supposedly what's his name's advisor, but I wouldn't put too much emphasis on Jared Kushner. He's a young guy that's involved in the presidency. He's the son-in-law of Donald Trump, because I don't think he's really a power broker. The people making the voting decisions and the real big decisions are this old crowd, and we need to get these people out of power. We can't deal with another 25 years of Nancy Pelosi. We can't deal with another 15 years of Joe Biden, who, by the way, is the founder of the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, which is a one-sided act. We can't deal with these people that are utterly disgusting. TFL, Bill, I am no doubt in my mind believe that TFL started in the 1980s, really started to hit hard when these baby boomers, men, started getting divorced. And I talked about this, and this female economist talked about this, and they married all these younger women, which threw off the numbers. And these younger women, I remember these 22-year-old women that were marrying these older guys, and they thought, oh, it's the greatest thing. I got a guy, a yuppie with money, and he's got a great job and all that stuff. And we cannot forgive these sons of bitches for what they've done. The TFL problem and all the shit that has happened with men in all the social media or the social engineering in the media has all been done by the older guard. It wasn't the baby boomers, or it wasn't the Gen Xers or the millennials that did this. It was the old guard that did this, and continues to do it, by the way.
Yeah, it's the same guard that you have in office right now.
Right.
They've been there in your face the entire time worldwide. It's the same old people holding these positions. And I think what we need to do is we need to take them right out of position. We need to make sure that they have no say-so on who's replacing them. And we need to, basically stop the recruiting and the grooming, like the Freemasons.
And Bill, the thing is that what they're doing is they are getting people in my age group and slightly younger in positions, but they're very selective on how they're doing it. And you'll notice there's not that many of them, because it's not as easy to find as many psychopaths as they are. That generation of baby boomers and silent generation, they are the most power hungry people in the world. They're almost like parents that never gave up being parents. And it's almost like, I remember a lot of the politicians in power now are old enough to be my 30-year-old parents that are 30 years my senior. So Nancy Pelosi would be that bitchy woman that I would have known when I was a kid, and now she's still in power where she should have been retired 15 years ago, you know?
Exactly. And all these same people keep staying in power up until they're on their grave bed. And then suddenly, they're replaced with somebody that's already been groomed and set into position to carry on their agendas.
Yeah.
And the people really have no say-so whatsoever. So, because, let's just say,
and so this election is a moot point. The only options we're going to get for president are another 4 years of Donald Trump, which is basically a baby boomer who was born into privilege. He was partying his way in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, or was at least living the good life. and then we're going to get a Jewish businessman, Mike Bloomberg, who's 78 years old. We may get the liberal or the socialist Bernie Sanders, who's also 78. Or we might get Joe Biden, and he's an Irish Catholic. I mean, I really feel that this old guard doesn't want to let go of the power, and we cannot allow this in future elections. I mean, I don't know how we would stop it. If it would take a public consciousness of the Gen Xers to say, look, we were the latchkey kids. We were treated like total garbage. We weren't treated as responsible adults, and certainly we weren't going to ever be the next group of people to reign and to make the world a better place. And I think there's a lot of arrested development for that.
I don't think we're going to get a better place, Steve, unless something like this happens.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think that the elites are staring us right in the face. We're listening to people like David Icke. He centers his. You notice how when David Icke talks about reptilians, he never refers to like some 25-year-old reptilian. He's always referring to some old lady reptilian, like the Queen of England or George Bush. So even he is admitting that this problem is an age problem. No one thinks of the elites as in young elites. They think of old people, and that's what we have running us. This Henry Kissinger, Joe Biden crowd. You know, we gotta be aware that this problem is as bad as it is, and we've got to acknowledge that if this group of people could easily run us into the ground in the next 30 years, because that's what they're going to do. The baby boomers are not leaving power anytime soon.
No, they're not going to be leaving power anytime soon. And when they do leave power, they're already going to have their people that are just like them picked out and groomed for the position, and the problems will just continue to go on.
Right.
And then people will be in office for what, 50, 60 years.
Right. I mean, and I know people can argue and say, well, what about Strom Thurmond? He's not a baby boomer or whatever. The point is that I'm not justifying it by comparing. They were all corrupt at some level. But the point is that we have to represent the new generation. And think about Generation Z. I mean, they are probably going to really feel the heat of this, because if the Generation Z that are now graduating high school start to realize that they've got to deal with another 20, 30 more years of baby boomer bullshit, how's that going to make them feel?
Oh, yeah, they're just left behind, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then what? We're going to start all over with ABCD again?
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, that feels that way. So I wanted to point that out, because this election, it's just showing me that the candidates are getting older and older. And they're getting older and older because they're the same people in power, just getting older and older. They don't want to leave power. And that's why we won't have how do you solve the problems when the very people that created the problems are your elected officials, and they claim they have an answer to solve the problems, but they created the problems?
Yeah, they give you that's a problem, reaction, solution.
Right.
The same people.
And you can look at every president that we've had. Every one of them has done something. Like Bill Clinton was responsible for that Glass-Steagall Act, which allowed the banks to invest in risky investments, which threw the banking industry off. And then you had they were given loans to people with barely any income, and the housing crisis, and then the bailout of the banks and everything else. All of this stuff was created by the older generation, the baby boomers and the silent. So now what we're going to do is we're going to allow those people to define to fix the problem, or try to fix the problem, which we know is BS.
Oh, that's exactly it. And these same people, like, Bill Clinton. During Bill Clinton's reign, he's also the one that helped support and give the nukes to North Korea.
Right.
Whether people know that or not. Right.
We give them the nukes, and then the same people are trying to find a way to get them out of their hands. It's absolutely insane, the leadership. And Bill, I'm telling you, every nation in the world needs to acknowledge that the old guard is dangerous. They have been dangerous. We don't need a dangerous crowd. We don't need to have these hand-selected young people. We've got to have people that want to do the right thing for this generation and the generations to come. And what we have are a bunch of idiotic psychopaths that are self-centered and they're only thinking about themselves.
So what you do is you tear down the system, you take all these old people out, you don't replace them with any
Yeah.
Freemasons, you don't replace them with any Mensa people, you replace
Right.
them with people off the streets that
Right.
have no affiliate to any of these people, so that you can
Hmm.
get a new body of people in there at a younger age that actually care about what's going on.
Right. We would want to have people, for example, that the Occupy Wall Street people, because the most progressive people are always my generation and millennials. You think about this, when you think of the term progressive, like people that want to have go into organic farming and solar power, did you think of an old farty old white man that's 95 years old? Fuck no. You're thinking of some younger person that wants to do that. We can't get this to happen with the old guard at all. It ain't going to happen.
No. The only
And
way, whoever, and I think Steve's got a valid point here, because when you really
Yeah.
look at it, and it makes perfect sense that everything else has been smoking mirrors. On the real truth,
Right,
is the
exactly.
reason you can't find the elitists because they've been in your face the entire time.
And like Mark Passio talks about, the problems are the occult, this mystical occult. But he can't, and I don't like being deceived like that, because it's really evasive. He's not really telling you what's going on. David Icke blames it on lizard people, and he doesn't tell you how the fact that the very people that are making our lives miserable are the same people that don't want to let go of power, and they're in your face. I mean, it's so it's so obvious. We see Capitol Hill, the same old farts, and everyone on Capitol Hill has got all gray hair, and it's just a mess. And a few young people that are handpicked. That's another thing that needs to stop, is this handpicked nepotism, because this is something that the elites, the powers that are in power now, are very good at doing, is handpicking who they want. And this shit is just, it's not for the good of the society. It's just right.
Yeah, it is exactly
so
that.
To see this happen, we would have to be willing. And Bill, what I'm talking about in the future is like a renaissance. Like, and when Europe went into a renaissance, it was a thought renaissance, and it was obviously there was a lot of beautiful art was produced, but we need like a spiritual renaissance where we are enlightened, where we could just throw the old guard out the window. These popes, these ministers, these old farts, I'll go as far to say Billy Graham. I think that the guy went way past his time, if you want to be honest. I think a lot of these people need to relinquish the power to younger people. We don't need their guidance. They're horrible examples of who we should be following. I don't
exactly.
see Billy Graham.
And they should have no say-so. Yeah. They should just be removed with no say-so.
The popes all support these wars. Like Pope John Paul II, when we were invading Iraq, I know he was getting frail there, but he didn't even say we got to end this war. It's like they all support the same thing. And these elites are old people. If the Catholic Church wants to rejuvenate itself, they better put a 35 or 40-year-old pope in there, somebody that can relate to the younger crowd. And that's another thing. They've already said this to the younger Catholic parishioners. They've said we need to have a pope that represents our generation, because you can't get some 80-year-old guy or 90-year-old guy to represent you.
No, you need to, and then like I said, it needs to be handpicked by the people, and it can't be anybody that was a member of these clubs. If you're a member of Mensa or a member of Freemasons, you don't stand a chance, because we got to do away with where they're getting their people from, so that we can get a clean selection.
And how long this can go on, I don't know. The charade will go on because of several reasons. Number one, I think it's twofold. Number one, the baby boomers represent the biggest voting bloc. But the second problem is that the Gen Xers, like my people, and people don't really believe they have what it takes to be in these people's positions, which I disagree. We are smart enough to take it over. We could very easily take over the reins of power, and we could do it in a much more civil way. But I don't see how we can afford to keep fighting more wars for oil, all by the demands of these old pricks, continually to putting off the healthcare problem, it goes up, 15, 20% a year. We have to honestly address the. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people that have good jobs, and we all know there are people that work for the auto companies that make $100,000 a year, and they're very happy with their lives. But those jobs aren't going to last forever, and not everybody's making good money. And there's people in this economy that are doing very well, that are middle class, but it's far and few. More people are struggling, and the debts that this country keeps putting on are just going through the roof, and I think it's time for change.
Well, I think you get the change, and then you take the propaganda out of the media completely, okay, and make sure anybody that's going to be in mainstream media has to tell the truth, and you get real investigative journalists back, not ones that are writing scripts for somebody else, and start reporting truth rather than lies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I say that has to go with it, because we can't keep the hierarchy that these old farts have created.
Right.
Because it's no good.
I don't know what the solution is, Bill, but I'm glad I thought about that. I'm glad we had that talk earlier about this, because this election, these old farty old white men that are running for power, these old codgers, this is the best that my generation can have. Like, you can't find somebody like 45 or 50 years old that can represent a younger generation. No, we got to have these old geezers in positions of power making the decisions, and then making
should have been retired years ago.
They should have been retired years ago. I don't want to see another 4 years of God forbid. What if Joe Biden becomes the Democratic nominee and he's elected? I certainly don't want to see Trump elected, but I don't want to see Biden elected either. You know?
You got that right.
And so I don't know what the answer to this is. And Trump is very healthy. He doesn't drink and smoke. He'll probably live another 20 years. And whether or not he'll run for president, obviously he can't run after 4 years, but he may run for senator. He might be a senator of his state for the next 4 to 8 years or whatever. You never know. And we'll be dealing with the same old garbage. And at this point, it's a moot point. I don't know if we can. I don't know if it make you sound radical, but we're going to have a coup at some point, unless these people decide, hey, we're done leading. You guys, it's your turn to go. It's your turn to have a chance.
Well, yeah. The only problem with that is their turn will have a chance. Will be people they selected and groomed.
Right, I know, and it's bad. It's kind of like Rush Limbaugh's got that Ben Shapiro. I think that's going to be his next fill-in for the EIV radio network but Rush Limbaugh dies of cancer or whatever he's sick from. They're going to fill somebody else in for him, and it'll just be the same old phony right-wing crap that we need to bomb the Middle East and all that other crap. And it's like, we have people that are progressives, but they're not being heard, Bill. It isn't that the progressives out there don't exist. Nobody's listening to them because they're so swamped over by the money and the power. And the old money is powerful. There's no doubt the old money is doing its good job at keeping the same people in power all the time. So,
it is. You keep the same people in power, and they're all working together, and it's on a global scale, and you'll find it's all old codgers all over the world in the same positions, holding on to power, and they all need to be taken and kicked out.
You know what? If I could make the rules today, I would say anybody. We're in the year 2020. I would say anybody born before 1960 this would be, or 63 or 64, somebody that's pushing 60. I wouldn't have anybody over 60 in power. I would say 60 would be like the absolute cutoff. At that point, you're done. I mean, cut off. None of this 65, 75, 83 years old. I would cut this off at 60, but I would that would be the maximum. I'd probably want to have people more like in their 40s and 50s running the country. I would not want to run a bunch of fucking old people like Nancy Pelosi. What a disgusting spectacle we have. We used to have Harry Reid, and then it was Nancy Pelosi and this Mitch McConnell creep. I mean,
Yeah.
this stuff has
Don't
got to
worry,
go.
we keep it going, and what you're going to see is a bunch of people pushing wheelchairs with falling apart old codgers on your media, and that'll be your
Yeah.
people telling everybody what to do, right to their deathbed.
Right. I mean, even people like Henry Kissinger are on the scene, and they're in limited capacity, but they're all decision makers. And I mean, I'm just like, what in this world? Like you look at international leaders too. I mean, we can go to leaders like Vladimir Putin. I mean, this guy is not going to concede power. Remember, the Russian Constitution said that a president could only run for 2 terms. So he creates a new position called the Prime Minister of Russia. So he took that position for 4 years while this guy named Medvedev or whatever his name was took the position for 4 years. Then he re-ran for president and won again. So they're all staying in power. These elites, the old guard, they do not want to give that power up.
That's exactly it. I mean, I think it's pretty cool because in reality, it's always been right under our nose and in our face. And we just been chasing a bunch of smoking mirrors.
Yeah, and then like we've been listening to Mark Passio and people like Dave and Alex Jones have been telling us it's the globalists. The globalists are basically our elected leaders. They're basically the people we have in office as in the House and the Senate. It's the same group of psychopaths.
It's the same group over and over and over, and that's why you don't see the only faces you see change are presidents, puppets. They're being controlled by the actual real people.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think Steve's onto something here. I think he's correct.
Yeah, and here's another thing. A lot of these people that retire from political office are always given gravy consulting jobs for the government. Like they actually get into, I think it was Dick Gephardt of Missouri and Trent Latta, I think of Tennessee. They all got consulting jobs working for corporations that work with the government. So they're never really retired. They're always just working behind the scenes. And I don't understand why they need the money. What do these people need the money for?
Hey, I don't think it's the money. I think it's an addiction to the power. Okay, so they stay working so they still can have some say-so in what goes on.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with the money.
I don't know how we solve this, Bill. You only can maybe write like a science fiction novel about it, but yeah, probably not.
I would say
you're right.
I would say we need to promote bringing young into power and doing away with the old.
Right. I think you got a good point there.
That's really what it needs. Bring in the young and get rid of the old.
Yeah, and at least bring some people with progressive views that want to do things and look at things. Like you could get the finest minds of younger people and say, look, here's what we want to do for the next generation. We want to have affordable housing. Okay, that's a big issue. That's another thing. Affordable housing has become a very, very big issue in all these elections because you know how demographics can change things. We need to reform immigration. We need to reform the healthcare industry, but we need to have the right people to do it. And as long as we keep waiting for these old geezer politicians to do it, we're never going to change it,
Yeah, I think that's it. I think Steve hit it on the nail. I really do. And I do believe this is probably what the real truth would be. And I think that.
Yeah, so I don't know if this election. I don't think this election's going to really make a difference at all. It's going to be another 4 years of old geezers running us. You're going to see Nancy Pelosi in 4 years. We're going to see Mitch McConnell for another 4 years. We're going to see we're going to see all these people like Bloomberg for another 4 years in some capacity, whether he wins or not. I don't know what else to say.
I think
So
it's gonna
anything
be
you want
all
to throw
the same
in?
people.
Or I guess I'm kind of all pretty much said what I wanted to
Oh
say.
yeah, I think you have. I think
Yeah.
it's gonna be all the same old people.
And
Without
that is
even
your
looking at it,
elites right
yeah.
there.
Without
Yeah.
even looking at it, Trump will be here another 4 years, along with the other old
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, I think that it's just we'll get a lot of people out there. We'll be fighting more wars, and I don't, like I said, Bill, I don't see why people haven't put their finger on the age factor of these people that are the same people, like I said. And then not to mention one last thing, the Supreme Court justices, who came up with this idea that they had to work till they were 85, 90. Ruth Gator Ginsburg's almost 90 years old now, or 87. It's like, you really think these people are in a mental state to think at that age?
Yeah, they don't belong on the bench at that age.
Yeah, it's insane. So
Okay, I think that's pretty much it. But yeah,
yeah, that was just my ranting today. Like I said, that was my rant for today, and your rant as well, is that let them leave comments and suggestions what they think. Has Generation X been screwed? You can Google that term, you'll find it is true. Generation X and millennials actually have, both groups are going to have having a harder time with the economy. So you have a great day, Bill.
yep.
I'll tell you what, just stop the recording.